Welcome to the last bonus show of the year. No, I'm kidding. Pat's looking confused. It's not. We've still got like a whole month left to go, so don't worry about that. Everything's fine. Pat quickly looking for a calendar on the wall. Okay, hey, this is very interesting. There's a piece in The Week by Ryan Cooper, which points out that Joe Biden has dramatically scaled back drone strikes. And for years, remember that under Barack Obama, there was a whole bunch of, yeah, Obama's okay, but the drone stuff is terrible. And then under Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump insisted that he was going to be the guy not to start new wars, he did a lot of droning, in fact, and very quietly, without much fanfare, Joe Biden has dramatically scaled back drone strikes, and it's not getting a lot of attention. The possibility of airstrikes retaliating for certain elements early during Biden's presidency was a topic, but it's quite interesting that it's basically not a story.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one drone strike that Biden ordered, which did get a lot of attention,
Yes.
which was the response to the ISIS-K attack at the airport when the U.S. was pulling troops out of Afghanistan. So, and that turned out to be botched. I think it was all civilians that they killed, 10 civilians, something like that, many of them children. And so, you know, maybe it's in response to that disaster that they've decided to scale this back a little bit. And maybe it's because of that we're not even hearing much about the decision to scale it back at all. Like, they don't want to continue the negative press coverage that they got from that botched attack.
Right.
And they may figure that, well, if we decide to announce to the public that we're going to scale down drone strikes, then we're sort of admitting that that was a mistake to have done that in the first place.
Yep.
But it does, in some respects, feel like a missed opportunity to be doing this and not to mention it, because I'd have to imagine that there are a good amount of people, especially on the left, who want to cut down the number of drone strikes that we're doing, and to do it without announcing it, that just seems like a wasted opportunity.
Questionable legal infrastructure for many of these drone strikes, very questionable moral underpinnings. You would think that it's something they shouldn't be silent on. And I'm actually encouraged because of this article, which Pat found this article for today's bonus show. The article has convinced me that we should not be silent about the fact that there has been this big scale back. And so next week, I'm gonna do the story with additional information on the regular show, because it should be discussed. And hey, you know what? If people don't like it, let them come out and say, no, we should be droning more people, right? Put them in the position of having to say that.
Yeah, that often happens. We'll test out a story on the bonus show,
right?
And then if it goes well, then we'll decide, okay, this is worthy of the main show, and
exactly.
We'll put it on the main show, and that's exactly what we're doing here, testing the waters.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think they should make a big deal out of this. I suppose we really want to take a look at how the American public feels when it comes to drone strikes, and if there really is this widespread support against continuing them, because in theory, you'd think that people would be in support of them, because the idea is, okay, well, you can take out targets, take out the enemy without putting American troops in danger, because
Sure.
You're not putting boots on the ground. You just order these attacks from the sky. And so there's really no risk for us, but a higher reward. In practice, it turns out to not always be that way, because, of course, we often don't get the best intelligence. Sometimes we kill the wrong people. Sometimes the attacks miss, or even worse, like we kill the first responders, like we saw from, leaked tapes and that sort of thing in the past. And so, it's one of those things where, like, maybe the public just doesn't know too much about it, and they think, okay, well, the alternative is just going to be we're going to put American troops in danger, and we don't like that either. So maybe that would be something that could backfire against Biden. It would make it look like maybe he's not so pro-military at all, that he's actually going to be putting troops at risk.
That's exactly the thought process. But then the question is Biden putting troops on the ground instead? And the answer is no. It's not. That this is like an old conventional wisdom, which is sometimes people are mad about drone strikes because they're like, we don't like the idea of drone strikes instead of nothing. And then often accurately, we say, well, oftentimes it's drone strikes instead of boots on the ground. In this case, Biden is scaling back drone strikes, but he's not doing boots on the ground.
Yeah, totally. And he pulled out of Afghanistan. You got to give him credit for that. I mean, there's a number of issues, especially when it comes to foreign policy, that certain sectors of the right really should be giving him credit for. I'm not talking about the neocon right,
sure,
but those sort of like libertarian, non-interventionalist right-wingers, they should be very, very happy with what Biden has done so far
for sure.
when it comes to foreign policy. But of course, they're staying hush-hush, and they're just finding different ways to criticize him, because ultimately, I don't know if they're really all that policy-oriented. It's more about trying to give wins to Trump and Republicans
course.
and that sort of thing. It's not about whether or not he's actually pulling troops out of the Middle East.
When Bush liked the Iraq war, it was good. And then when Trump said it was bad and wars are bad, then they were bad. But then now that it's Biden not getting us into wars, at least so far, they don't care about it anymore. It's the same old thing as far as that goes. So we'll talk more about that next week when I do a full story on it. Right now, there is a major fight over the future of abortion at the Supreme Court. As many of you know, Roe v. Wade is the 1973 decision that, as a general rule, legalized abortion in the United States. Still subject to state regulation. Sometimes states go too far, and courts will say this implicitly violates Roe v. Wade. Right now, the Supreme Court is hearing a case, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. This is the Mississippi law that bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And over time, the court has always upheld Roe v. Wade, the central framework of it, by rejecting significant infringement on abortion rights. The idea is constitutionally, women have a right to an abortion during the first 2 trimesters of pregnancy when the fetus would be unable to survive outside of the womb. That's about 24 weeks. Mississippi has asked the Supreme Court not only to find in their favor here, but also to reverse prior abortion decisions and to simply say states can decide. Now, I think it's fair to say, Pat, at most times since 1973, we would have said, this has no chance. This is not going to happen. But we now have Neil Gorsuch on the court. We have Brett Kavanaugh. We have Amy COVID Barrett, as she is known in some circles, Trump appointees. And although we don't know what's going to happen, there are legal experts who are saying they are sending some signals that they're at least willing to side with the anti-abortion side here. But we don't know if they all will. They all might, but we don't know that they all will. This would be a massive blow to abortion rights in the United States.
Absolutely. And we won't know for sure what they decide to rule until June. But I am definitely worried. We know that Supreme Court justices and judges in general try to not buck the precedent. So the idea is, well, if Roe versus Wade has been on the books for 50 years or so, then maybe there's going to be this call to not overturn it. But we also know that these judges are ideological and they may say, well, 50 years in the grand scope of things, that's not that long. And ultimately, if they're conservative, they want to reduce abortion rights to begin with, and so they may decide to side with Mississippi here. And ultimately, we will see what happens because we don't really have that much of a say in what's going on here. They clearly have the majority, and they can certainly do this if they want to. I mean, I'd imagine that conservatives will argue that it's not going to be the end of the world, and women will still be able to get abortions. They'll just have to go to states that are more left-leaning. And if you're in need of an abortion, and if you're in a red state like Mississippi, well, that's okay. You can just take a Greyhound bus up to Illinois or somewhere like that
after 15 weeks anyway.
There. Yeah, and so they'll act as if it's not the end of the world and it's not that draconian or restrictive or anything like that. But we know the reality of this stuff. We know it's not always so easy to get that Greyhound bus or to take off work or to have permission from your parents in some cases when you're talking about women who are under 18 girls. And there's this talk about, well, is 15 weeks, why is that not enough time? Oftentimes 15 weeks is just around the cusp of when you find out that you're pregnant. And so it's definitely one of those things where you do need more time. And that's why I think the viability metric of about 22 to 24 weeks makes a lot more sense to me. And that should remain the law.
Yeah. And for people who are going to say, listen, people know they're pregnant before that time, you would have multiple missed periods or whatever. Sometimes periods are irregular. Sometimes different things happen. There's not always a physical change up until 14, 15 weeks. So it's not quite so clear. And the big picture is that our worst fears about the entire Trump disaster were true. We said in 2016, I mean, think back, Pat. We said in 2016, Hillary's no progressive beacon, okay? But if Trump wins and he gets 2, maybe 3 Supreme Court picks, it could be a disaster, including the end of abortion as we know it in the United States. And there were some people, including people supposedly on the left, saying, no, that's not going to happen. And that's not a big enough deal. And no. It all happened. Trump got his 3 Supreme Court picks. We said they're going to keep doing this at the state level, appeal until eventually the Supreme Court takes one and maybe does something to reverse precedent on Roe v. Wade. We might be 6 months from that. I mean, it all is potentially happening.
Yep. And that's why sometimes you just got to suck it up and vote for the lesser of two evils. If you perceive both parties to be evil, if you perceive both candidates to be evil, well, then make sure that you employ harm reduction. And that's the view that Noam Chomsky and plenty of others have taken. And certainly that's the side that I was on. That's the side that you were on.
Yep.
And I mean, this is definitely the consequence. It is still pretty shocking, though, that he was able to get 3 Supreme Court justices. I mean, we knew that he was going to get at least 1, right? But the fact that he got 3 when Obama before him only got 2, he was supposed to get 3, but obviously the Republicans in the Senate blocked him. But that took him 8 years, whereas Trump was able to do it in 4 years, get 3 justices on the court. So I mean, a lot of this stuff was predictable. And what can you do at this point? You can try to have the best lawyers argue in favor of abortion rights, but you're trying to appeal to these conservative justices, and you just got to cross your fingers and pray, I guess.
You know how Trump says about the pandemic, it never should have happened? This never should have happened. All you can do now is get the best lawyers, as you say, Pat, but it never should have happened. Hillary Clinton should have won. And of course, I mean, more people should have voted for her. I'm not suggesting the election was stolen. More people should have voted for her, and we wouldn't be in this position right now. If Hillary Clinton had won in 2016, Roe v. Wade would not be in danger right now. Full stop. I mean, that's it. There's no way around that.
Yeah. And we know that presidents often get elected, every time they get elected through the Electoral College. And so that benefits Republicans, at least it has in recent years. And also the Senate tends to skew Republican as well, because every state, regardless of population, gets 2 senators. And so you have this presidency position that's going to skew right wing. You have the Senate, which is going to skew right wing. And the result of that is a conservative Supreme Court. That's also skewing right wing, and that's really not reflective of where the American public is. If you had a system that was more apportioned based on popularity, like if we had the popular vote for presidents, and if we had Senate seats apportioned based on the population of different states, then we probably wouldn't be in this mess, because we've looked at the polling. People want to preserve Roe versus Wade. They want to preserve abortion rights in this country. But because we live in this society, in this government that's not very democratic, not very representative of the American people, we're in this mess to begin with.
No question about it. So we will be awaiting the decision, and that's not going to be until June. We talked yesterday about the candidacy of Dr. Mehmet Oz, a regular purveyor of pseudoscience cures and quack medicines and the like. He's running as a Republican in Pennsylvania, or Pennsylvania, hold on. How does Trump say it? Pennsylvania?
That sounds about right. Yeah. And you got to mention it's the Commonwealth, too. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Always worth mentioning. Dr. Oz is having his show removed by some stations. I love this. TV stations in Philadelphia, New York City, and Cleveland said yesterday, no more Dr. Oz show now that he is formally a candidate for U.S. Senate. They are saying it's not so much their personal political views, but that they are compelled by the FCC's equal time rules to give rival candidates the ability to request matching airtime. And because Dr. Oz has this Dr. Oz show, which is not like his campaign per se, but that because he is a candidate for office, they would be required to give John Fetterman and, who knows, whoever else, all the same time that Dr. Oz gets. They're saying it is completely impractical. And so that they are going to be pulling the show. Now, there are other stations, Pat, that are saying that is not really the spirit of the equal time laws. So we're not going to take the same approach, which I don't know. It would have to be fought out. Someone would have to sue. Someone would have to try to get access and say, listen, Dr. Oz got an hour. I'm running against Dr. Oz. I should get an hour. And then it would be a fight. It would have to be adjudicated legally. I don't know what way it would go. It's not obvious to me that it would be found that because he has an entertainment show, his political opponents need the same amount of time. But there's at least some stations in these 3 cities saying, we're not going to run the show anymore. And that's, of course, their prerogative.
Yeah, so that suggests to me that maybe some of the stations that are not any longer going to broadcast his show, maybe they were just looking for a way out as it was.
Maybe.
I mean, I'd imagine that Dr. Oz gets good ratings, but maybe now because people are going to recognize, oh, this guy's a conservative, and maybe you lose half of your audience or a good portion of your audience at least because of that, then they'll figure, okay, well, it's going to be better for us to broadcast something else instead. This could just be an out. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I mean, this idea that it's not a political show and all that stuff. That's mostly true, but we know that he's going to be talking about COVID a lot. I'm sure that he has, not like I actually watched the show, but I'm certain that he's talking about COVID and treatments and vaccines and that sort of thing.
Someone emailed me and said, he does at least advocate mask wearing on COVID, in addition to the fact that he was on Hannity pushing hydroxychloroquine, saying 2 to 3% death rate for opening schools is okay, to kind of choose your own adventure sort of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is that in any other time, you could make the argument that, okay, well, this is not a political show. He just talks about medical advice. But now we know that the medical has become the political, right? Because all of these different topics, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and the vaccine and everything else, there's a clear political bent to it. And he's even like sort of hinted at that in his announcement video that we played on the show yesterday.
Yeah.
Talking about how like some of these medical experts don't know what they're talking about, and some of our policies when it comes to COVID don't make any sense. Like, you can already see the overlap there. And so I don't think he can get away entirely with just saying, oh, this is a medical advice show. It has nothing to do with politics or my Senate run. I don't think he can do that.
You also can't get away with calling it a medical advice show when you're pushing, what was it? Raspberry ketones and green coffee bean extract, as well as stuffing lavender in your bed sheets at night to do I forget what that was supposed to do.
I do all three of those things, but not for medical reasons, for different reasons that I can't get into right now.
You do it for spiritual reasons, not for medical reasons. Raspberry ketones are a link back to Pat's ancestors in some way.
And I love the smell of those things. I mean, they're just the scents. They make me feel good,
It's some people like the smell of cedar. Pat prefers raspberry ketones. Exactly. All right. So anyway, Dr. Oz losing a few affiliates, and we're going to continue. By the way, I want to get your take on this. I've been very, so I spoke yesterday to our YouTube rep, and I said to him, he's been saying, David, the midterms are going to be big in 22. We expect it to get going like in the spring with a lot of interest. And I was kind of like, I just don't know. I don't know. Now with the Texas gubernatorial, Ron DeSantis, I think, is up for re-election, right? In 2022. We've got the Senate race with Dr. Oz. Lauren Boebert wants Trump to do a rally for her in Colorado. Like, this actually might be one of the most paid attention to midterms in a long time.
That may be so. I mean, 2018 was a big deal as well, though, because it was Democrats' first opportunity to go to the polls after Trump got elected. And so there was a lot of attention paid to that one. And there was this idea that there was going to be a blue wave. So, maybe it would be on par with that. I don't know if it's going to get any extra attention. Certainly, Republicans are riled up right now, and they do have a good shot at winning. We know that the Virginia gubernatorial race didn't go our way. So that suggests that we may be in trouble coming up next year as well. But I don't know. The spring does sound a little bit early to me. Like, I would imagine maybe like summer sounds a little bit more realistic.
That's what I thought. But our YouTube rep says we are predicting that by late April, early May, searches for everything election related will be up. That can only be good for independent media, thinking very selfishly,
Well, who am I to disagree with the YouTube rep who knows about this stuff and who has covered this and really is in on it?
He has the data.
Maybe it's going to be maybe we can split the difference, though. It'll not be spring exactly or summer exactly. It'll be like right on the cusp of those two things, like maybe May.
Memorial
is when
Day.
it will.
I expect Memorial Day. Memorial Day will be the official start of I expect Trump to do a Memorial Day rally for someone running in 2022. That'll be the official start, I guess, is my prediction.
Yeah, but maybe not Ron DeSantis, though. He can't give him too much clout. He wants to make Ron fight on his own, so that way he doesn't have to worry about running against him in 2024.
I'm looking forward to that battle as well, Trump versus DeSantis, just on rhetoric. Okay, thanks, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow with a new show and a new bonus show, and we're here, guys. We're here. It's December, and we've got a lot going on.